ladies and gents, welcome to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome aboard the Meteor F.8. Now the F.8 is battle rating 8.7 and it is the last aircraft at the end of the Gloucester Meteor line and the highest battle rating jet currently available for the British in War Thunder. It's armed with 420mm Hispano cannons with 760 rounds of ammunition, which is pretty much the standard loadout for all of the Gloucester Meteors in War Thunder. It's also regarded as just being a bad aircraft. I don't agree with that at all. It's a very hard aircraft, but not a bad one. At a time in War Thunder when any aircraft that could be considered a challenge for a pilot to learn how to fly is being rampantly undertiered, the Meteor F.8 represents one of the last and the biggest pilot skill testers remaining in the game. So what do I mean by this? Well, first let's talk engines and energy retention. The Meteor F.8 is powered by two Rolls-Royce Derwent 8 turbojets producing 3,600 pounds of thrust each. This is a combined total of 7,200 pounds of thrust. To put that into perspective for you, the CL-13's Oriander engine produces 7,275 pounds of thrust. It's only 75 pounds more. Now, splitting this thrust over two engines means the F.8 does not have the speed of the single-engine fighters like the Sabre. In fact, it tops out at around 950 kilometers an hour before breaking its wings. However, it does have acceleration. It will out-accelerate pretty much anything it can encounter. Pulling it out of a dive at 930 kilometers an hour, the energy retention is so high the plane will sit at 930 kilometers an hour indefinitely in level flight. This incredibly high energy retention also means its climb rate is deceptive. With all performance mods unlocked, this plane reads on its stat cards as climbing below 4,000 feet a minute, which is entirely correct. But what you've got to remember is that those stat cards are based on sustained climb, so climbing at an optimal speed and maintaining that speed, not losing it. The energy retention on the F.8 is so high that when you point it at an angle, an aggressive climb angle, the aircraft will lose very little speed while being able to drastically increase its climb rate in exchange. This plane, in short bursts, will climb with the MiG-15 Biz. So what about dives? Well, as I said a moment ago, the aircraft will break its wings beyond 950 kilometers an hour at sea level, and in fact, diving from above 15,000 feet, you actually need to start watching your speed very closely and applying air brake at anywhere from 850, otherwise you risk breaking its wings. However, in initial dive, the combination of the F.8 Meteor's weight and its incredible thrust, along with its acceleration, means the F.8 will outdive any aircraft in the game, including the F-86 Sabre. Now, I just need to stress here that I am talking about initial dive. There is a point where the F-86 Sabre and the MiG-15 will both start catching you again due to having higher top speeds. As a pilot of an F-8, it's important that you know when that point is and when to pull out of the dive and start manoeuvring. Speaking of manoeuvrability, how does the F-8 manoeuvre? Well, there's two areas you've got to look at. High speed, this is mainly used for avoiding the CLs. Low speed, the MiG-15 Biz. At high speeds, we're talking around 700 to 800 kilometers an hour. The F.8 Meteor will slightly outmaneuver the CL-13. You need to know how to use that manoeuvrability, however, because there is only a very, very small margin. We are talking decimal point levels of extra manoeuvrability. It's just enough that if you know what you're doing, you'll be able to stay out of their guns in a turn. It is far better, if possible, to try and drag the CL down to low speeds. Why low speeds? Well, at low speeds, a skilled pilot in an F.8 Meteor will hand a MiG-15 Biz its own ass. Now, once again, this manoeuvrability comes under a condition, and this condition is related entirely to pilot skill. The air brakes on the F.8 Meteor will increase manoeuvrability in some circumstances, but reduce them in others. Knowing when to apply them is one of the most important skills of flying the Meteor F.8. The same applies to combat flaps. Above or below particular speeds, the combat flaps will actually reduce manoeuvrability in the F.8. However, if you hit that sweet spot, the plane is capable of making 90-degree snap turns almost instantly, and you cannot break its wings. It doesn't matter how many G's you pull, the Meteor F.8's wings will not break. Needless to say, the Meteor F.8 is not new player friendly. If you have used your premium Spitfire to grind all the way down to the F.8 and think you're going to jump into it and go kick the teeth in of a few CLs and a few MiG-15 Biz, you're in for a very, very bad time. It's also worth mentioning that everything that I just said is in relation to a fully upgraded, performance-wise at least, Meteor F.8. The only upgrades that my plane is missing is the G-suit, which really only affects blackout if it really does anything at all, and the bomb pylons. All other performance modifications for this aircraft are unlocked. So we're 5 minutes from takeoff, we're at 17, nearly 18,000 feet. I'm just cruising around looking for a fight. And what I'm looking for here is isolated fighters. The Meteor F.8 can maneuver against multiple aircraft, but its combat effectiveness is severely reduced in doing so. This is a plane that really likes to find people that separate from the group on their own and pull them apart when they get there. This is mainly due to its optimal combat range being at very, very slow speeds. Most of your deaths in the Meteor F.8 will be due to engaging a low-speed target in your optimal combat range and being boomed by a high-speed target in a dive. Now I've just dived down, it looks like all the action is happening at low altitude, which suits me just fine. As you can see, the overspeed warning coming on at around 930 kilometers an hour, at 940 at red lines, 950 you risk breaking your wings. And I've just selected my first target, Russian MiG-15 Biz. He goes for altitude and disappears in the clouds. I bring the nose around to try and spot him, but it's a thick cloud. Oh shit, that was close. Wasn't expecting him to turn quite so aggressively in my direction, but again I don't think he was expecting me to do the same thing. Bring the plane around hard. As you can see, 540 is very close to its optimal turning speeds. MiG-15 Biz passes around behind. Take it over. Now I'm just going to watch his position. I want to turn back in on him. No flaps or brakes activated yet, so he's going to cut back in on the turn, drop the air brake and dip the nose down, so I cut in underneath his guns. He passes straight over the top, immediately begin a counter turn. Start trying to track his position again. Air brakes again deployed to arrest speed, dip down in front. What I'm doing is trying to get him to bleed his speed down sub 500. Air brakes away, begin turning back in his direction, but this time activate the combat flaps and you can see the plane just snaps its nose straight around, loop in underneath, he passes up over the top, bring the nose straight back around, come in underneath, roll over, quick pulse of the air brake, back on combat flaps, kill shot, he's dead. Immediately spot targets off my left wing, so bring it back around. Who's going to isolate themselves next? Oh, and we have a winner. One German MiG-15 Biz popping smoke after taking a victory. So, dive in behind. Couldn't get the guns around quite fast enough. Probably should have popped combat flaps in. I would have had a kill shot. Let him pass by, take it back into the vertical. Combat flaps deployed to bring myself around fast. Gravity turn into a dive. Gaining airspeed using that initial dive speed to quickly accelerate in on the MiG-15. A couple of shots away. Score a hit. Gaining on him too fast. Pop air brakes. Line up for the kill shot. He goes vertical and just narrowly avoids the guns. Air brakes away. Take it into the vertical with him. Surprise, surprise. I'm right there behind him. Quick pulse of the air brakes again just to bring the nose back around quickly. Back into the dive, and I do lose trigger discipline here in a second. More shots away, more shots, none of them on a particularly good angle. Again, try to intercept, he rolls. Try to beat the lead, nowhere near enough lead to score a hit. Again, he turns out of the shot. Shooting at too high an angle. This is one of the problems with the plane, it doesn't have a lot of yaw to bring itself around. Another big hit. And there we go, critical hit, and instead of just letting him go down, I pushed in some extra shots as well, which cost me a metric shit ton of ammunition. Far too many shots fired. I'm down to 95 rounds of cannon ammunition. Still, second kill and only 2 kills for the team so far. However, the rest of the team has crumbled. It's me and an F-25 Sabre versus 4 MiG-15 Biz. Still, who's going to isolate themselves next? Just trying to accelerate to intercept. 3 targets directly in front of me, and there we go, one of them turns back to engage. Take the plane straight into the vertical, half roll mid-loop. Turn back, combat flaps deployed, pop it back through. Goes up, try a shot from underneath, down to 79 rounds of ammunition. He's turned back through, combat flaps again, bring the nose straight back around. Trying to clear the one that's on the F-25 at the moment. Half a kilometre away, he goes back past, flaps back on, loop back around, put the guns to intercept position. No kill. He attempts to dip and dive away, use that dive speed again, close distance. Second shot, misses. Closing back in, optimal angle, and there we go, critical hit and fireballed, third kill. And here's the point where I make a mistake. One of the MiG-15s crashed during that engagement. One is on the tail of the F-25 Sabre that is behind me, and one of them has disappeared. Now I should have realised the one that disappeared is actually RTB at the moment. With only 27 rounds of cannon left on board, I should have RTB'd as well. If I put this thing down on the round, I would have had a full deck of ammo left on board, and this thing on medium fuel level carries 30 minutes, which is more than the MiG-15s do. I could have outlasted them on endurance alone, but instead, with only 27 rounds of ammunition, I turned back to try and save the Sabre. It was a pointless effort, however. These guys are engaging at Sabre and MiG combat speeds now. These guys are moving in excess of 700 kilometers an hour. At their acceleration, there's no way known I'm going to be able to intercept in time to be able to save that F-86. And he's just about to die, there he goes. In not breaking the distance when I had the chance, this MiG-15 now knows precisely where I am, is able to follow me wherever I want to go, has a higher top speed and will be able to get there at the same time I do, and he's currently telling his mate, who is RTB getting a fresh load of fuel and ammo, exactly where I am. Quick burst while I had the opportunity to, 19 rounds of ammunition left, and this guy is no idiot. He's not trying to turn with a Meteor F.8, he is running and running hard. Why I've been able to keep up with him until this point, we're hitting 790 kilometers an hour now. We're pulling into his speed zone, not mine. He's going to start pulling away. Quickly blow some of my speed to climb in underneath, trying to close distance to get a shot. These 19 rounds might be able to make the difference if I can close the gap. But down to 580, he dives over. I roll to reinitiate the dive, but he's already accelerated out past 1.1 kilometers. I'm not going to catch him. And it was at this moment that I realised how big a mistake that I've actually made. Pass out past 850, he's still pulling away, he's wound up nearly to 1,000 kilometers an hour now. I see a dot behind me, realise it's just showed you the AI. It was at this point that I realised that the remaining player had disappeared. I worked out exactly where he was almost instantly. I have to rush the base. I've got to try and break distance on this guy, fly as low as I can so I disappear. Not directly at the runway, go nap the earth and see whether or not I can get this thing on the ground, get fuel and ammo in it before they work out what I'm doing and intercept me. I don't need a lot of speed off the runway. If I can hit 400 on takeoff, even if they're right on top of me, I can immediately go into maneuvers and be fine. So, back into my favourite river canyon I go. It is probably worth noting the engine temps. Flying at slow speed in this plane, while it is the optimal area, will heat your engines up. It is very easy to cool them back down. Just go back to 900 kilometers an hour and it'll drop them off. Just don't stay there for any longer than 6 or 7 minutes. It's also worth noting, as you can see, 920, over 900, turning and manoeuvring through the canyon, no problems at all. While the F8's top speed may only be around 980 kilometers an hour, in comparison to the Sabres in excess of 1,100 kilometers an hour, the Meteor F8 can maintain most of its top speed with no problems at all due to its retention and its thrust. The Sabres can't. The Sabres have trouble maintaining over 1,000 kilometers an hour without a dive to sustain that speed. Almost back to the runway and no dots on the radar, which is a good sign. In hindsight, I probably should have picked a different path in order to get back to the runway. This one is a little too direct towards the runway than I probably should have gone for. Still, there was always a chance the MiG would have gone to the midfield to see whether or not I went in that direction to hit AI, or maybe have gone towards the runway to replenish his own ammunition and fuel reserves. He has to be getting low at this point. He'll be well under 10 minutes. Engines to zero, air brakes deployed, 90-degree turn to pull onto the runway, and from 900 to 500 kilometers an hour almost instantly, and no, here's our little friend in the MiG. So, air brakes away, thrust back to full, loop back underneath, just turn hard so he doesn't get guns on me, take it into a rollover, pull back around onto the tail, still only have 19 rounds of ammunition. Now, I still could potentially win a fight with this MiG. I only need to hit him once and I have 19 rounds of ammunition. And I do have all the base AAA as well. If he's going to fight me, he's going to have to fight me at slow speeds, making it easier for the base AAA to engage him. So, there's still a chance at this point. However, this is when the second MiG arrives. Now it's 2-on-1 with only 19 rounds, and this is not a fight that I'm going to win. Remember what I said before about most deaths? Well, the MiG-15 Biz in front of me is running a slow speed fight ready to close range engage. The second one is coming in at about 1,000 kilometers an hour. Combat flaps, air brakes popped, turn in underneath, track him through, roll over to drop in on him. He pulls up to counter. This guy was a good pilot, he knew how to deal with the Meteor. Air brakes away, take into the vertical. Try and get the shots on, and I can get the guns close, but just not quite. The second MiG passes underneath. just not quite there into the stall. I'm going to have to pop the air brakes, so I hammerhead. 111 kilometers an hour, nose straight back at the ground, try and get as much dive speed as I can. I need to get back to combat and maneuvering speeds fast. First shots go through, take a clip to the wing, nothing serious, nothing I need to worry about yet. Bank around, already back at 520, ready to maneuver. Air brakes extended, pull a loop, the MiG backs off on the throttle fast, puts a second shot through, and apparently is firing gummy bears, because that one was a spark. Retract air brake, left hand bank, pulling it in tight, strap back into the vertical, roll over. I really should have popped combat flaps and air brakes again at this point, cause the MiG to overshoot. Again, bounce, 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 no problems from its ammo so far at all. And then the other one comes through, and he is not firing gummy bears. And that's the end of my match. So, results for the match. Well, 3 kills for the team, 1 death, Bomber Rescuer, Fighter Rescuer, Shadow Strike X2, Windstreak X3, and Terror of the Skies. And the only 3 kills for the match, 40,185 Silver Lions, 3,063 research points, which is nearly enough for me to unlock the first bomb pylon. But still, a loss or not, this was a damn good fight, and it shows the capabilities of the Meteor F.8 in the right hands. It is an incredibly dangerous machine if used correctly. Underestimate it and you will have a very, very bad day. Now, I probably could have survived longer against those 2 MiGs at the end of that match. However, I did make a few mistakes there, and that was largely, well, I'd really given up. I had 2 MiGs on top of me. I knew one of them had a full fuel load. I couldn't beat them on endurance. I had no ammunition, and there was no way known they were going to let me put down to repair, rearm, or refuel. Now, I'm going to end this one a little differently to the way I normally would. First things first, head-ons. Head-on should always be a last resort, never a primary attack. However, if you do choose to do a head-on, do yourself a favour. Don't advertise that you're going to do a head-on. It makes you look a little foolish. Now, I said before that I probably could have survived longer against those 2 MiG-15s if I had done the right things at the right time. So what's the setup for this battle? Basically, I ran myself out of ammunition, the team has collapsed much like the last round. I actually have one of my subscribers flying a MiG-15 and I have a CL-13 that are on my tail, and they're both going to try and kill me. I did get an offer to go in and land and rearm and make a fair fight of it, but I was more curious to see how long I could survive between these 2 aircraft. It's probably worth mentioning that this was one of the first times I'd flown the Meteor F8 in 7 months. So I'm not going to commentate on this one, I'm just going to let you watch the manoeuvrability of the Meteor F8 and show you exactly how long it takes a MiG-15 and a CL, the worst possible combination of aircraft to encounter in this plane, to actually kill me. just over 5 minutes from game on, and once again it was the high-speed boom and zoomer that got me. Until next time, fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.